How are you doing? I'm Martin from Gardens for Life, and this is our questions and answers sessions. So this is number 8 in the series, and we're going to put these out as audio as well, just kind of like a podcast form, just to make it easier for people to listen to it, and that way you can listen to it on your way to work, for example, or maybe while you're doing something else. So this week we've been very busy just tidying up the gardens a little bit and starting more plants. So those are the kind of things that need to be done this time of year. Otherwise, all those weeds that have not been removed from last year will take over the place. And especially the nettles and the grasses and the good old creeping buttercups. So they've all been definitely getting set up to spread. So I'm going to remove as many of those as I can with my own hands. And I found some handy tools actually for that very task, for weed removal. And we're also going to cover them in wood chips as well. So after removing any grasses or whatever, going to cover the whole lot with wood chips, and whatever else pops through will be a lot weaker in the end. As long as you try to actually pull up all of the roots, if possible, wherever possible. So we'll just hang in there for a minute for people to join. And if you haven't watched our other sessions, if this is your first time you're here, it might be worth checking out our other episodes. This is episode 8, as I said. And if you like this one, maybe you'll like the other ones as well. And there's a list of them on our channel and our website as well. We're also connected today to our Birdland Homestead channel as well. So, and we're streaming to Facebook and Twitter, also known as X at the moment. And if you have any questions at all regards homesteading or gardening, even no-dig gardening or forest gardening, please let me know in the comments. We also can answer questions about all kinds of other things, such as food production and preservation, chicken keeping, and a little bit about solar power and generators. So definitely I'd be able to answer basic questions in that, and especially flashlights and headlights and all of that kind of thing, and batteries, and home brewing as well. So lots of different topics that we can cover here. Let me just straighten up that camera just a little bit. So let's see if we can just hang on there for a few people to come in. So I have a question here. What have we been up to this week? Well, I kind of answered that already. Mostly it was weeding in the last week, since last Thursday, as a matter of fact. We've maybe done about, probably I've done maybe about 10 hours worth of weeding, which is a lot to do in 1 week, but definitely is making big progress in the gardens now, and covering things in wood chips as well. Some of our wood chips have gotten a little bit, they're gone a little bit, they've broken down a little bit, which is not in of itself a bad thing. But if you want them to be easier to shovel, because they're saturated with water at the moment, of course, it would have rained on them. We are shoveling them by hand at the moment, and my arms are quite sore now at the moment, because I think I've moved about 15 wheelbarrows of wood chips, which isn't really a whole lot, but that's just one of those things that needs to be done, covering the paths with a fresh layer of wood chips. And I might even make a video about that again, because a lot of people have been asking, how do we keep our feet clean and dry? We don't need to wear wellies in our gardens, actually. So because actually for most of the year anyway, in the winter time you could do with boots for sure. And in some places it does get mucky sometimes, wherever the water anywhere the garden kind of dips a little bit, like it's not downhill. All of our gardens are not level. They're all kind of sloped a little bit. And wherever there is a little bit of a puddle gathering, it usually turns into muck, even though it's compost. So we just take some of that out. I would shovel some of that away, and I would simply cover the ground with the path anyway, with fresh wood chips. And then that's it. That's how easy it can be. The wood chips usually take about a year to break down if you just put a little bit of a sprinkle on your paths. And if you want to move them, if it's much easier to move them when the wood chips are fresh. Plus, you can inoculate them with mushroom spawn as well, such as the King Stropharia or the winecap mushroom. So you got to do that within a couple of weeks or so, maximum a month. I heard that you have to use it on fresh wood, otherwise other spores will take over your wood chips. So when you get them delivered, hopefully they're fresh, and you'll get an extra year out of them if you spread them fresh, I reckon. So enough about wood chips. So yeah, let us know. Let us know if you have any questions, and I'll answer them. So if you come up with any questions after the fact, after this show, you can just email us to contact@gardensforlife.ie, and we'll answer your question next Thursday. And what else have we been up to? Well, I've been covering a lot of the weeds, or the existing vegetation, I should call it, with black tarps, and I've been moving them around, getting the garden ready to spread some compost on the weekend. So hopefully our friendly neighbor Brendan, hello, if you're watching, we really appreciate your help in the garden, and he's going to help us move the compost. So that's 6 to 8 month old mushroom compost. Move it into situ, so we're going to make our garden beds there. And we have already smothered the existing vegetation, so the grass and all that, for about a year actually. And anywhere there's a hole in the tarp, you're going to have things growing through it. Of course, you're going to have to deal with that. And the wind also blew the tarps around a few times as well. So yeah, for tarping your the space that you're going to use for your garden or for your garden beds, you're best to use black plastic, like the very thick builder's plastic, or proper tarps if you can afford them. And we just put down rocks every couple of meters or so, and that does the job. Unfortunately, yeah, we had a couple of storms there during the winter, and all the tarps got blown around. It's always extra work to have to put them all back and move all the rocks back onto them. But don't leave them uncovered too long, because the grass won't be long coming back. And we had areas of ground that we had completely smothered the existing vegetation for about a full year, and then took the tarp off and then waited for an extra 3 or 4 weeks. For some reason, we had a little bit of a delay, and to move the compost on, and of course the ferns and the grasses had already come back again. So be careful. I would remove the tarps when you're ready to put your compost on your no-dig garden. So please let me know, folks, if you have any questions. Usually later on in this session, we seem to get more people joining. For some reason, people join in a little bit later than 9 o'clock. I think 9:30 or even 9:45. It usually takes off, and then I kind of feel sorry at 10 then to say bye-bye, because you'd have more people on. But I would rather not start these sessions any later than 9 o'clock, to be honest. So, but I'm open to suggestions, and if you haven't joined our Birdland Homestead YouTube channel, please do so. So Bianca, maybe you could put a link to the channel in the notes or in the comments. And if you're watching this on Gardens for Life, if you're watching this on the Birdland Homestead channel, most likely you already know about our Gardens for Life channel as well. We are on Odyssey and Rumble as well, but we're not streaming to there live yet. Just haven't set that up yet. Thank you. And so just the Birdland Homestead channel is mainly for other content other than gardening, but sometimes I do post stuff up on Gardens for Life as well, because we've been building up this channel for 7 years now, and I've put out a video every week for 6.5 years now, nearly 7 years, and yeah, we've got lots of you watching now, so that's good, and I'd like to say thank you. for those of you who have been watching our videos. So hopefully you get something out of it. A little bit of entertainment with our YouTube dogs, as we like to call them. And we've got cats as well, of course. And hopefully you get a bit of entertainment value as well as a bit of little bit of some educational material as well. We like to teach people what works and what doesn't work on the homestead and the gardens. And we focus on gardening mainly because the garden is kind of like the engine room of the homestead. It's kind of like the kitchen in a restaurant, or the kitchen, I guess, in a hotel. It's kind of like the engine room. It's the most productive space, basically. The garden is where you're producing the most by the square meter or the square foot, wherever you are. And it can save you, potentially it can save you thousands of euro to grow your own food and even herbs, for example. And if you're able to preserve it as well, if you get good at, for example, pressure canning or freezing or drying, you can even extend your harvest, so to speak. Mainly, we don't actually do much in terms of preservation, like in terms of vegetables, but tomato sauce is one thing we'd like to actually get to make for the year. So if you want to use 1 jar of tomato sauce per week for the whole year without having to buy one in the shop, if you want to actually get the tomatoes, either grow them yourself, or whether you're buying them from a local producer, the quality is just so much better. And it will take quite a few jars. I'm not sure how many kilos of tomatoes we would need to cover the year, but we'll have to do the maths and figure that out. So we recently ran a pressure canning course as well, the first time, and it went quite well. And we're also teaching a little bit about vacuum sealing and freezing and all kinds of other methods of food storage within that course as well. So if you're in the Midlands, you can take a look at our events page, and please do come to I'm going to answer a question in a second. Actually, we'll answer the question first, and we'll talk about the event later. What types of figs do you grow? So we've got about 4 different figs. There is brown turkey, which is the most common fig grown in Ireland. I guess it's the most successful or most cold tolerant. You can grow them outside, but they grow twice as fast indoors, and they fruit way better. So you can also grow other varieties of figs, but they haven't really been fruiting much outside. We have some indoors, and they're fruiting like crazy. But I think that's because even though their roots are not restricted, they're still fruiting quite a lot. There's like 20 little figs coming on each of them, and they're only about maybe 1 meter by 1 meter in size, the bush itself. And that's because I think it's because the plant is probably under stress because we haven't been watering them much in the tunnel. So in figs, you have to kind of they say you have to stress the plant by reducing the size of the root, by constricting the root to make it fruit. Otherwise, it'll just keep growing bigger and bigger and never fruit. It hasn't really happened in our experience. We've always been getting fruit. Maybe it depends on the variety. But Desert King is another variety we're growing, and it's very good. I got that one as a recommendation from Paul Gauci from the Back to Eden movement. And I think he lives, where does he live? In Washington State, I think. And he grows Desert King up there outdoors, and it does very well. So brown turkey is a good one. That's the easy one to grow. I'd start with that. Maybe Desert King. You can also get Black Mission, and you can get Persian Black. So those are the varieties. There's probably a bunch of others. Some of our fig trees didn't survive the winter, the very cold winter, a few years ago. And like the French variety Rouge de Bordeaux, that one, the entire plant just died. It basically just didn't make it through the winter. I think the plant froze, even though it was covered in wood chips partially. So we have another question here. Have you tried feeding Jerusalem artichokes to your chickens? I read they can eat them, Wondering if they'd be a good bulk. So, yeah, no, you could probably bulk out the chicken's food with Jerusalem artichokes. I'm not sure if they'll eat them raw, but if you do feed them to them, you probably need to cure them first. And I'm not sure if they're not too tough. Maybe they'll be too tough for them to eat. Yacons, no problem. They'll eat yacons all day long because they're easy to eat and they're sweet as well. And they don't cause any digestive distress. They do have a bit of inulin in them, but nowhere near as much as the Jerusalem artichoke. Of course, the Jerusalem artichoke or sunchoke is king of inulin, which is why they're also known as fartichoke, as many of you probably know. So you need to cure those in sunlight for 2 weeks, probably 1 to 2 weeks before you can eat them yourself without getting too much gas. I'm sure the same is true for your chickens. And I think Jerusalem artichokes would be a good way to feed your chickens. I've never tried it. We just give them greens from the gardens and oats, basically, and some layers pellets. And it's all organic. It's the best we can get. And, of course, anything we can grow ourselves would be better than what we can get in the shop for them. So another question there. When is the next seed and plant swap in Colleen Hall? Hello, Marie. So the next swap meet is actually on the 12th of May, and you can go to our website. It's just gardensforlife.ie/events. And you can check there. There is a link right at the top for the next Homesteaders of Ireland swap meet. That's what it's called. It's the same as always. It's a seed and plant swap, but we're adding on extra bits. That's basically all there's to it. It's still a free event, and it's been really good for the last few years. We had been running the event for 3 years now, so this will be our 5th event. And it's been growing steadily ever since. And it's a great event because we get to meet all the people that we were supposed to be visiting for ages. And they all come together in one place. And then they all get to meet each other as well. So it saves us time, but also it creates connections between them. And it's great for networking as well. That's why we're hosting these kind of events, just to bring people together, give people a reason to come together even, which we need nowadays. And just basically people walk away with lots of seeds and plants and cuttings and even a few prizes from the raffle, possibly. And yeah, it's a great event, if I may say so myself. But I always have a great time, myself and Bianca have, and we always get to have lots of chats with people, and we make lots of connections. Really, that's the main reason for us to even host it, is actually to make connections in the community. Never mind seeds. We don't even have time to actually go to the tables and check what seeds are available. We bring in a ton of seeds and a whole bunch of cuttings and plants. But yeah, I must make it into a thing where I spend like 5 minutes in the middle of the event just walking around looking at the seeds on the tables, because there was an abundance of seeds and plants available last time, all free for the taking. And most of them were taken, actually. Most of them are going to good homes. And yeah, so those all the people coming to those events actually will have plenty of extra seeds as well to share with their friends and grow lots of hopefully perennial flowers and other plants as well, like vegetables, for example. So we have a lot of workshops coming up. If you're interested in taking a look at our events page, so it's on the Gardens for Life website. We have chicken keeping, which was a great success, actually. We hosted that one for the first time last weekend, and it worked very well. We had a few people over from Mayo, and they were kind enough to come over to do our course. And we were also doing a home brewing workshop as well. So we also have how to grow food using no-dig gardening and a number of other workshops as well, including a homesteading introduction, which I think we're going to change slightly, make it into a more practical experience here on site rather than theoretical. But all the rest of the workshops are definitely more of a practical ran in a more practical way. So again, if you're interested in workshops, just go to our events page. Let me see now. We have a few more questions. Let me see here. So how to grow onions? Well, I wouldn't be a good person to ask about growing onions. I have grown many perennial onions, like the Egyptian onion. That's the walking onion. It kind of tip layers, basically. But also the potato onion, which just bunches. It's a perennial onion. Regular onions, I think you can grow them from sets or from seed. If you want to get ahead, if you want to save money, and if you want to grow lots of onions, or one or the other, you can just start them off in trays, basically just in seed trays with seed start and compost, and just do multi-sowing where you put a few seeds in each cell and grow those on for a while. And you can, as they're growing up, as they're filling out the actual cells in your seed tray, you can plant those out. And they will turn into full-size onions in about maybe 5 months or so. I'm no expert, but they're quite slow to grow, same as leeks. But you can also buy them as onion sets in a bag, probably something like that size. And they're usually about €2 for probably, I don't know how many onions there is in a couple of hundred. Probably usually about half a kilo of onion sets. And you can stick those in the ground the right way around. Make sure that you could put them in. It might sound funny, but you got to make sure that the root is pointed down the way. Otherwise, they won't grow properly. And those will also turn into full-size onions, but much quicker. I think when you're buying onion sets, you're basically just saving the germination phase plus for them to get to about that size. I think you're saving maybe a month and a half or maybe 2 months, something like that. But just remember that all the alliums, all of the onions and garlic, well, the onions are basically biennials, so they save their energy in the bulb, and then next year they make a seed stalk. So same as garlic, you have to make sure you remove the seed stalks, otherwise you're going to get seed. And of course, you don't want that. You want the garlic and the onion to keep its bulb, and then you're going to harvest that next year. Or you can leave it for a year. With garlic anyway, it splits, keeps splitting year after year. So I like planting onions, perennial onions and garlic, especially elephant garlic. I love that because you can just plant it anywhere in the gardens and just leave it there for 2 or 3 years and just forget about it. You know, our gardens are quite extensive. We probably have about 1.5 acres of gardens at this stage, and you can just plant any kind of garlic, especially the elephant garlic. That won't get lost in among the other plants because it's quite big. It looks about the size of a leek, maybe even the size of a young corn plant. You can just leave those in the garden and they'll be grand, and you can just harvest them whenever you want. You can even harvest the greens of garlic as well. There's no harm at all. We're going to grow garlic chives now again, and they seem to be a lot harder to grow, even though it should be easy enough than the regular chives. Regular chives are super hardy. We found they go through all these harsh winters and summers, no problem. So I have a question here. Are you spraying potatoes? Let me see here. Are you spraying potatoes? Be a use of the low risk of blight. Oh yeah, no problem. I don't spray any potatoes. I don't. People often ask us, "Are you organic? Are you an organic grower?" And I say, I don't even spray what organic growers are allowed to spray. I don't spray anything, whether it's natural or chemical. I just let nature work it out. But of course, it is a long-term approach, and it takes time. So basically, I'll talk about potatoes first. I'll tell you a little story, which I haven't talked about which I haven't actually said in public. The house we lived at last time, so the last house we lived at, we grew potatoes in a no-dig garden bed, basically just a few layers of newspaper or even cardboard put on top of cardboard, the cardboard put on top of the grass, then some compost, and then some potatoes. And we planted those, and only 3 months, maybe like halfway through the growing process, the neighbor came to check on our potatoes to have a look, and he was 92 years old at the time, and he said, "How come your potatoes are so healthy? They're dark green, the leaves, and they're doing really well, and they had no blight on them." And he says everyone around in the whole area had blight on their potatoes, but our potatoes didn't. So you asked, what did you spray on them? And I said, I didn't spray them at all. I think that's the secret. Your plants need to be healthy. Now, the reason why tomatoes and potatoes are actually very susceptible to things like blight, I wouldn't even call it that. I call it a mold. It's basically just a mold. The leaves are very thin. That's the problem. And it's a very moist country. Ireland is a moist country. So unless you're growing them indoors where it's drier, where the leaves don't be rained on, well, then you're not going to have much of that to deal with. So when you anytime your plants are healthy, and you can help your plants to be healthy by not digging the ground, by doing no dig gardening, feed them with plenty of compost from the get-go, or maybe even top it off every year if you're harvesting vegetables from that area. Just top it off with maybe an inch or two of, well, 2 inches too much, about an inch of extra compost every year, and that helps to feed the soil life for the whole growing season. And the soil life is what feeds your plants and makes all of those nutrients available to your plants. And it's mainly nitrogen for vegetables like that, especially very green vegetables like leafy greens. When you're talking about trees, berry bushes, and that kind of thing, it's more wood. There's more carbon involved, but all of the plants need minerals, same as us. And when you feed your plants with minerals, for example, volcanic rock dust, you can spread on your garden beds on a day, especially when you before you put your plants in. If you haven't done so yet, you can spread some volcanic rock dust. You can get that from Fruit Hill Farm in Cork. I think it comes in a 25-kilo bag, and it's not that expensive. It covers 100 square meters, which is about the standard size allotment that you'd get in the UK or Ireland. And you can grow a lot of vegetables out of an area 100 square meters. We did the pizza garden project about 3.5 years ago, nearly 4. And we grew quite a few vegetables, especially in the first year. Now it has slowly but surely turned into a perennial garden, as gardens do around here, for anyone that has seen our place or has seen the videos. Hello, Vanessa, how are you doing? So, yeah, no, in terms of potatoes, I just haven't had time to worry about spraying them, let alone plant them or plant new ones and harvest them in the same season. I usually plant potatoes in places just to get rid of them, not to have them go to waste. Like, say, potatoes that we get from the shop and that are chitted, that have chitted in the house. It doesn't matter how long it chits, whether they're this long or this long, it doesn't matter. You can still plant them out in the garden, and we don't want to see them go to waste. So instead of throwing them on a compost pile, we just throw them in the garden and cover them with some compost. And usually that's what happens to our potatoes, and we don't, sometimes we don't harvest them on time and just leave them in the ground for next year, and they grow again. So when you have a no-dig garden, they don't go rotten in the ground because the ground is so well drained. So let me see here, another question. When you lay your wood chip pats, do you put plastic down underneath the wood chips? No, depends. So I have done that if the grass but underneath is not dead yet. If you have smothered the grass, you don't need to. And my newest technique is that I don't bother separating the pat from the garden beds or the grow space with the compost on it. The compost is everywhere in the entire area. and we just walk the pats into the compost, as in just walk it. If you haven't got enough compost, you can take a rake and just scrape the compost out of the pats. You could do that and then put your wood chip in there. It'll last longer if you have wood chips that deep rather than just a sprinkle, because of course the soil life is going to have a harder time to eat, the wood chips on the pats. But if you just put a sprinkle on, you're going to have to renew the wood chips every year. It's grand. It's easy. It doesn't take much. I mean, a wheelbarrow or even a few buckets of wood chips every meter. A bucket of wood chips every meter of pat, which is usually about 1.5 feet wide. That's all it takes, really. Just a little sprinkle of wood chips will keep your feet dry and clean for the growing season. Have you tried growing with seaweed? I mulched my Jerusalem artichokes with fresh seaweed, and they were bigger than ever. We don't use seaweed because we live, I think, 60 kilometers from the coast, so it's not feasible for us to pick it up. Therefore, we buy mushroom compost, which is readily available here in our area. So we're close enough to the Midlands. We're just northwest of the Midlands, and we have access to some of the mushroom farms nearby, only about an hour away. One of them is actually half an hour away, and we get mushroom compost, and that does all the job for us. And we've not needed to dig or plow our ground at all. We basically just smother the existing vegetation and or the weeds, if you want to call them that, and just cover it with compost, a good thick layer. Usually we start off with 6 inches of compost that's well matured, at least 3 or 4 months old. Even better, 6 to 18 months old or 6 to 12 months old, because it'll settle a little bit. So in the beginning it's very fluffy. If you're putting the compost on your garden's grow spaces or garden beds when it's relatively fresh, if you just need to move it on out of the way where it is, it'll take longer to break down. If you keep it in a big pile, it'll break down much faster. So 3 or 4 months does the job. If you're spreading it, it could take 6 months before you can grow something in it. But if you're putting it on fresh, definitely put on at least 8 inches or 20 centimeters of it, because it'll settle. So any other questions? Do you have any other questions, anybody watching this? And don't worry if you don't have any questions at the moment. Just maybe spend your week in the garden and think of any questions that you might have. And don't worry, you can come back next Thursday and ask us. So, or you can just email us in the meantime as well, to contact@gardensforlife.ie, and we answer any questions that are homesteading related, or to do with no-dig gardening, forest gardening, which is the way we're actually headed at the moment. So all of our gardens are slowly but surely over the years evolving into a forest garden, which was kind of the plan, but it's also kind of the way of it. So what do you mean by what are you growing, RN? What does that mean, RN? What are you growing? So let's see here. So there's another question. Does the mushroom farm deliver the compost, or do you have to pay a farmer with a tractor to pick it up? Now that's a very good question. Most of the cost involved when you get mushroom compost is the transport cost. So that's about, usually the load of compost could be 50 quid for a big trailer or a truckload, like 15 tons. If you're picking up a car trailer load, because the logistics of it, just them having to meet you, it's still going to be 20, 25 euro. So trust me, you're better off to get someone to bring you 15 tons. Even if you think you're never going to use it all, it's good to have it there in case you do, because you'll have it for next year as well. In fact, it'll be better next year. It's an increasing, it's actually, it's an, what's the word for that? You know, the value of it increases over time. It's an asset, basically, and it's living capital, so it'll only improve over time. Same as cheese and wine, as long as it's in a barrel. So you can pay a truck driver that is in contact with the that is in contact with the mushroom farm, and it's usually about €190. Sometimes it can be more if that's within an hour. If it's say a 3-hour drive, maybe it could be €400 to get 15 tons of compost delivered. Just if you are getting compost delivered, just make sure that your driveway is big enough for the truck to get in, and or the tractor and trailer. You know, those giant trailers, the huge trailers, like a silage trailer. Well, you got to be careful that they can get in and they don't get stuck, and that they can get out again. Usually the truck is a little bit easier to get delivery from, because a lot of you are not near a mushroom farm, and people are just not willing to drive a tractor for more than an hour away, because it's just it's slower than a truck anyway. It's not set up for that, and they don't want to end up with a flat tire way out there. So it's understandable, and you can get a phone number from us if you want to. You can just email me, contact@gardenforlife.ie. I'll email you back a phone number. Any of you that are watching this, I'll give you a phone number for Robert in Tullamore. And we don't have an affiliate relationship with him, but we like to help people get access to underutilized resources out there. Like mushroom compost is basically just it's just I wouldn't call it a waste product. It's just spent, and they can't use it to grow mushrooms anymore. That's why we can use it to grow plants and vegetables, and it's perfectly safe as well. What are you growing right now? Oh, sorry, I see now. So RN means right now. What are you growing right now? Well, that's a good question. So usually what happens is I don't bother starting seeds until March, and sometimes even April. Some of the seeds are still being started at the moment. We start seeds from March until about late summer, and a lot of the stuff that's out there already in the ground, nothing has been planted out yet. It's all just seeds that are only starting off now. They're only seedlings, and they're only small in the greenhouses on our tables. But all the stuff that's out there in the garden is perennial. So a lot of those plants are already there from last year, or even from 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, and they're growing bigger every year. So there is barely any space to add on any new plants, or even plant annual vegetables, which is why we're making more space this Saturday. So let's see how that goes, and we'll make a video about it and we'll show you. So stay tuned. We're growing a lot of stuff. So I made a show there. I think it was number 6 or number 5 of the questions and answers series, where I just talked about what kind of plants we're growing. So I'm starting off a lot of rhubarb this year, Glaston's Perpetual rhubarb. You can harvest that after midsummer. We usually have a harvest until early November on that. And I'm growing some Victoria rhubarb as well. Can't get seeds for any other variety. I must check and see if I can get Timberley early or some of the other ones as well. But a lot of rhubarb, a lot of marshmallows, a lot of those perennial flowers, medicinal flowers as well, like valerian and echinacea, and again a lot of marshmallows, because they're very popular. They look lovely in the garden. You get a pink and white flower, and you get the lovely soft leaves as well that are full of mucilage, which are great for tea, and it's great for the throat when you have a rough throat, like I do after talking for 39 minutes. We're growing some dahlias as well. We had some trouble with pumpkins. We like to grow the Oshiki-kuri pumpkin, which is a Japanese pumpkin, which is only about that size. It's much smaller than the giant pumpkins, but they mature much faster. So it's only 90 minutes for them to mature. And when they have matured, you can leave them on the vine until the very end of the growing season, and the next one will ripen, down the vine. So each vine has several pumpkins on them, and You can harvest those. I have a video actually, growing pumpkins. You can type it into our channel or our website, and you can find a video with lots of pumpkins in the thumbnail. And it's just a table full of pumpkins. I think we had like 200 pumpkins that time, and we saved the seeds as well. So that's one of our favorites to grow. And last year, 2 of our seed batches didn't grow for that. And courgettes as well. We're going to grow lots of courgettes. I know what you're thinking, and usually we end up with either no courgettes at all, or for various reasons, or we end up with way too many courgettes. And I know I'm not alone in that. I'm sure lots of you had way too many courgettes, more than you can deal with. Those plants are just pumping out courgettes like 1 every 2 days, and you don't know what to do with them. Well, if you have chickens, just throw them to the chickens. If you have more than you can deal with, because they love them. And we even grow courgettes. I'm going to grow 20 courgette plants this year, just because they're so productive, and we can just throw them to the chickens or the rabbits, and maybe the dogs. The dogs will eat courgettes too, and we can eat them, of course. But obviously we're giving the surplus to our animals, because then we have to buy less feed. And $1 saved, no, what was it? $1 not spent is $2 saved. Do you cut back your mallow plants once they have flowered? No. I would leave them alone until they dry up. It's a herbaceous perennial, the marsh mallow anyway, and the wood mallow and the zebra mallow also. They're all herbaceous perennials. So what that means is it just basically dies back. Everything above ground goes dry during the early winter, like December, and it just basically goes into the ground. It goes to sleep, hibernation for 3 months, and in spring it comes back. You can cut it back. I leave all the stalks in the garden, and Michael Pilarski is who I learned that from. He's great. He's on YouTube. He not himself, but there is some people that made some videos of him talking about all various different plants. And leave all of your dry stalks out there in the gardens. Don't try to tidy it all up at the end of the growing season, because you're only getting rid of all the habitat for all the insects and beetles and whatnot. You want those to overwinter, so that you have them there in spring when they wake up, and then you hopefully have some flowers for them to eat the nectar from. So that's what we do. We try to attract all of our insects, especially beneficial insects, using plants that are called insectaries. And those are just plants that basically flower for a very long period of time and produce lots of nectar and attract insects. And then we try to overwinter them by creating habitat, such as all of the stalks, especially the Jerusalem artichoke stalks. They're hollow. They have kind of foam in the middle, and kind of like the elder, if you're familiar with that wood. But also the marshmallow stalks, they are great. All the stalks in the garden, really, especially the hollow ones, fennel as well. We just leave those in situ until the end of the year. They kind of insulate the ground a little bit too for the winter, and insulate the soil life a little bit, and give habitat to various different beetles, which come and eat your slug eggs in early spring. So that's really important to note. That's one way to reduce slug pressure big time. But there's a combination of different things that you need to do to really reduce slug pressure down to a level where you don't care about it anymore, such as growing perennial plants. We grow perennials. The slugs, we don't care about the slugs. The slugs don't care about us. We can all live in the one garden. So let me see. Any other questions? So thanks, Bianca, for staying on, actually, and helping me highlight questions here. Do you still grow strawberries in crates? No, I do not, because strawberries are too much work. They are a bit finicky. They're a great crop, don't get me wrong. We love them, but they're a bit of work and they're a bit of maintenance, kind of like tomatoes. Now, once you plant the young strawberry plants into crates, you're fine. Fresh compost, bit of mineral dust, and maybe even a bit of wood chip on top. Plant them in your crates, they're fine. Or in any kind of bucket or whatever. In a bucket, you can have 3 strawberry plants, a 12-liter bucket, or one of those supermarket crates. They're usually about 6 plants or something like that, or 8 plants you can do. But you can grow strawberries in wood chips on the ground as well. I've grown strawberries for 5 years in the wood chip island in our big garden. If you type wood chip island into our channel, you'll find those videos. And in the beginning it was fine, but the strawberries they did spread, but then they became thinner and thinner, and they were kind of smothered out by other stuff like Jerusalem artichokes, of course. They're still there. They're not very productive. If you're growing strawberries in the ground, on the ground, even if you're growing them on top of wood chips, they will go moldy because the fruit itself is prone to go moldy because they're just grown too densely. But if you have them in a container, they kind of hang down and they're up off the ground. But I think they used to call them strawberries because they use straw to put underneath them, maybe in places where it's not dry enough for them not to go moldy unless you do that. So Jerusalem artichoke stalks are a good treat for rabbits. Oh, really? Are you serious? Is that dry stalks, Chris, or is it actually fresh stalks? I wonder. I didn't know that rabbits would be interested in that. We give them willow off cuttings, and during the growing season, your rabbits will eat willow leaves and the bark off the branches as well. The rabbits absolutely love them. Of course, we're not trying to train our rabbits to eat the bark off our trees. We don't want them to do that in case they ever get out, or in case we ever do happen to release them into our garden. However, there'll be lots of other things there, like kale, for example, that they'll prefer anyway. They'll always prefer kale. I think the only reason why rabbits and deer in general eat the bark off trees, especially fruit trees, is because they just haven't got much else around to eat. But if you have lots of other things for them to eat, like Sepp Holzer used to say, and Chris, you should totally look up Sepp Holzer, S-E-P-P. Holzer is H-O-L-Z-E-R. He says to grow fruit trees not the lollipop way, like out of the garden center, but keep all the lower branches so that all the smaller animals have something to eat. So there's also a guy called Toby Hemingway. Unfortunately, he passed on, but he wrote a great book called Permaculture. What was it called? Home Scale Permaculture. And you should only harvest when you're standing up. You should only harvest what's up here and what's down here. Anything that you can reach with your arms without having to bend down or jump up or get up with a ladder. Anything else up there is for the birds. Anything down below is for the rabbits or whatever. Dried, we can also eat fresh. Okay, so the Jerusalem artichoke stalks can be eaten by rabbits. I guess it's just something for them to nibble on, I think. I don't think there would be any nutritional value in them, especially dried. Not too sure about that. But what I like to do for our rabbits, we've only got 6 rabbits. I must make a video dedicated just to them, and I will. Probably on our Homestead channel, I'd say. And what I'm going to do is, usually what I do is I feed them a whole crate full of weeds, basically pulling weeds. Anything that's, without the root, really. Well, with the root, but without the compost. Throw it in the crate, mostly grass and things like creeping buttercup and dandelions. They love dandelions. So you can give your weeds to the chickens or the rabbits. So that's why we recycle our weeds, so that we don't have to throw them into the compost pile, and we don't have to, for those not to grow again and have to deal with them. If you want to support us, you can go to our Patreon page and sign up. We're going to be putting up more content there in the next while, and we'd highly appreciate your support as well. So, have you guys got any other questions for now? Otherwise, we'll sign off soon. And I can't believe it's already been nearly an hour. Time flies. I guess time flies when you keep talking. Yes, we should mention the Homesteaders of Ireland swap meet again. Any of you guys that live in Ireland, if you're within 2 hours of this event, you should come along. So the event is based near Roscommon, halfway between Roscommon town and Athlone town. And it's on the 12th of May and it's all about homesteading. And you can bring seeds, plants, or you can swap cuttings or anything homesteading related, anything that you produce on your either. It doesn't have to be a homestead produce or anything like that. It could even be something that's like a handcraft or something like that, or arts craft. And even if you don't have anything to swap for, you can come along anyway. So it's just an honesty system where you bring in whatever surplus you have and you leave it there on the tables and you take whatever you like. So there's lots of people bringing in very generously, bringing in hundreds of packets of seeds, and they're all available there. People walk away with, as I said in the video, lots of inspiration and a bunch of packets of seeds ready to go, and enthusiastic about the new growing season. So yeah, no, and you can support the event by just sharing the poster or even sharing the page and the video of it. So you can go to our website to find out more. It's just gardensforlife.ie/events. And if you'd like to host a little casual workshop at the event, and if you have any kind of skill that is homesteading related that you think is worth teaching other people, please send us a quick email to contact@gardensforlife.ie and let us know, and we'll reserve a little table for you, and you can run your workshop whenever you like during the event. Like things like even beekeeping. We haven't got a beekeeper yet that's going to maybe talk to people about it, in case some of the people there would be interested in getting into it. I'll be giving workshops about chicken keeping and growing food using no-dig gardening and that kind of thing. But of course, since that I'm one of the main people running the event, I'm probably not going to have as much time for the workshops as other people may. So if you'd like to volunteer, we would appreciate that very much. And if you have any kind of skill that you'd like to teach people, you can do so at the event itself. And we also are running a raffle at the event also. And if you'd like to bring in, if you'd like to support the event, you can bring in a prize or just get some raffle tickets at the event. So we hope to see lots of you at the event on the 12th. That's only next Sunday. Wow, that's only like, what's that, 10 days away. Gonna start bringing in, gonna start gathering up plants as well. We have a ton of old currant plants that we're going to bring in. And we have lots of seeds as well. So yeah, no, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Usually we get more people towards the end of these live streams, but we have to cut it off at an hour simply because, well, we do have other things to do, but mostly we do enjoy doing these, but an hour of talking is enough, and my throat has gone awful dry, even with a pint of water. So we'll see you next week, and please email your questions to contact@gardensforlife.ie, and I will answer those for you. Thank you. Bye-bye.